Um, it's an amazing story and so inspiring. I'll be very, very quick, and then we might ask the pastor to come and bring the evening to a close. My story, I have far less life experience, and I think was probably making a little less money as well than Sam Keong. But I was working as a political advisor to the leader of the opposition in Australia as his senior social policy advisor. And I was really enjoying it. I was loving it. I was doing some speech writing and policy work, and I love politics. I'd been working there for 7 or 8 years, and my wife and I had just gotten married, and we didn't have any kids, and so the money was just coming in. And when you don't have kids and you're married, the income doubles and triples, and there's nothing to spend it on, so the money just keeps coming in, right? And so we were just very, very blessed, overwhelmed by how the Lord was blessing us financially, and things were getting very comfortable. And like with Sam Keong, it's actually my wife's fault. It's always that wife's fault. She started to get a feeling that things were a little too comfortable, and that God had something else in store for us, that He wanted to challenge us, that we should be exploring different ways of serving Him. Not that you can't serve God from the public sector or in public leadership or through the medical profession or through the legal profession or any of these ways, but she felt like for us there was something else. Around this time, because I was working in politics, I was working with prime ministers and ministers and sitting around cabinet tables and things, I was getting quite frustrated with how the gospel of Christ was being misunderstood and misrepresented by both Christian leaders and anti-Christian leaders. I thought both were doing a terrible job. And I thought to myself, there must be better ways of answering these questions. There must be clearer, bolder, more strategic ways of proclaiming the gospel in the public square, of answering these questions that all these people seem to be having, both believers and non-believers. Really good, legitimate questions about science and God, about sexuality and God, about why trust the Bible, about where's the evidence for the resurrection, about, well, how can there be so much suffering, about the concept of evil. All of these questions that so many people have, both inside and outside the church. And the Christian leaders that I was dealing with just seemed to want to run away from these questions. And so my wife introduced me to this guy called Ravi Zacharias. And she said, this guy talks in a way that you think you should try him out and test some of his podcasts. And so that was how I got to know the ministry, and one thing led to another, and we found out that there was a full-time Christian apologetics program at Oxford, which is where my brother went as well. And so we applied, and it's Oxford, right? So you just apply, you pray about it, you assume you're not going to get in, and you get on with your life. So we did that, and then suddenly the Lord started opening doors, and I got a scholarship, and I got accepted, and so we both kind of had to take that step of submission and resign our jobs and sell our home, and we went to Oxford. And even when we went to Oxford, we thought we would just do it for 1 year, and then we would come back. And the guy that I was working for was looking like he was going to become the Prime Minister that following election cycle. He's still the leader of the opposition, actually. I maintain that's because I left the office. That's why he didn't become the Prime Minister. But no, he's a nice guy, and they have an election next year, so he may well become Prime Minister. But it was difficult to leave. It was very difficult to leave. But while we were in Oxford, every day of that 2 years that we spent there, the Lord called me step by step, just move me a little closer, move me a little closer. And I think the main thing for me, which I think applies to everyone, is that until I got serious about my relationship with God, He wasn't willing to get serious about His plans for my life. It was only when I got serious about my relationship with Him that He got serious about what He wanted me to do with my life. So my encouragement to you, and we'll leave you with this tonight, is that if you've been on the fence in your faith, if you've either just been coming to church, or you're a cultural Christian, or you've just been in this because the people around you are in it, or your parents have raised you in this way, that's wonderful that they have, but at some point you have to make a commitment and make a decision as to whether you want to bend your knee to what God wants for your life or what you want for your life. And if you've been hesitating, or you've been uncertain, or you kind of wear your Christianity like an accessory, like a handbag or a pair of shoes, it's just a nice part about you that gives you something to do on Sunday and gives you some nice friends. If that's all you've been doing with it, then I encourage you tonight to get serious, to take that step, to get serious about your relationship with God. It doesn't mean you're going to just necessarily go into full-time ministry. That's not the case at all. But God has a call on each of our lives. He has a grace covering He wants to give us. He has a sense of fullness and joy and well-being that will look it will look very different for very different people. But he has that for each of us. But he's waiting for us to get serious about him first before he shows us what he has for us. So thank you so much for having us. It's been a real blessing serving you. We hope to see you again. Please come along tomorrow night if you can, or on Saturday for the actual Congress, the conference. We got a couple of topics that we'll be speaking on. The morning session is why trust the Bible. The second session is where is the evidence for the resurrection. I'm going to give you a lawyer's take on how I would go about arguing for the resurrection in a courtroom using the legal rules of evidence. And then we're going to do a 2-hour open Q&A forum at the end of the day on Saturday. So please go and see Potin at the back if you'd like to do that. I'll ask the pastor to come up. Thank you again for having us, Pastor. It's been a real blessing.